Some scars don't come from cuts or bruises. They come from words never spoken, moments never acknowledged, and love that was always given to someone else. For 42 years, I played the role of the disappointing daughter, while my younger sister, Ava, was the golden child. It didn't matter what I achieved. Straight A's, prestigious scholarships, groundbreaking research. My parents only had eyes for Ava. She was their star, their pride, their constant source of admiration. I was just there. Quiet, studious, too serious for their taste. When Ava performed a little dance for guests, they clapped and cheered. When I wanted a chemistry set for my birthday, I got second-hand books instead. It was always the same. Ava's dreams were funded, her achievements celebrated, her mistakes forgiven. Mine, dismissed, ignored, or worse, used as an excuse to compare me to her. For decades, I swallowed the hurt, convinced myself I didn't need their approval. But nothing prepared me for the ultimate betrayal. The day I found my fiancé wrapped around my married sister in his office, that should have been the worst moment of my life. But in reality, it was the moment that set me free. Because by the time my wedding day came around, the truth about Ava, their golden child, was about to be revealed. And for once, they wouldn't be able to ignore it. Growing up, my place in the family was clear. Ava was the sunshine, the laughter, the little performer who dazzled everyone with her charm. I was the quiet one, more interested in disassembling clocks and reading science books than playing dress-up. At E. Just 6 years old, Ava had already mastered the art of being adored. She would put on performances for my parents' friends, twirling in her little dresses, singing off-key but with enough confidence to make up for it. My mother would beam. "She's such a natural, a born star." Meanwhile, I sat in my room, nose buried in a book, listening to my mother sigh downstairs. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" It wasn't just words, it was actions. For my 10th birthday, I begged for a chemistry set. Instead, I got a stack of used books because science experiments are messy. But when Ava decided she wanted ballet lessons a few months later, my parents miraculously found the money for private classes, designer tutus, and even a photo shoot for her recital. That same year, I asked to join the school's science club. My mother groaned about the cost and told me to focus on making friends instead. The only person who ever made me feel seen was my grandmother, Martha. A retired science teacher, she understood me in a way my parents never did. Her house became my sanctuary. She taught me about the constellations in her backyard, helped me with experiments in her kitchen, and always reminded me, "Your mind is a gift, Emily. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise." She was the only one who believed in me. By the time we were teenagers, the favoritism was undeniable. At 14, I won the state science fair with a renewable energy project. My parents? Too busy taking Ava to an audition to even attend the ceremony. Later that year, Ava landed a minor role in a community theater play. They threw a huge party, hired a professional photographer, and invited the entire family. High school was more of the same. I graduated as valedictorian, won national science competitions, and got a full scholarship to study biochemistry. When my acceptance letters arrived, my mother barely reacted. "At least we won't have to worry about your tuition." But when Ava wanted to attend a private performing arts school, they sold our vacation cabin to fund her tuition. "She shows so much promise," my father said. "We can't let that talent go to waste." That was the moment I stopped trying to earn their approval. I threw myself into my studies, into the world of science where my intelligence was valued. I built a career, became a research professor, earned tenure at 40. But no matter how much I accomplished, the only question my parents ever asked was, "Oh, Emily, are you still doing your little science things?" Meanwhile, Ava, she booked a commercial with 3 whole lines, and they celebrated like she'd won an Oscar. Then came David, my fiancé, a fellow researcher, someone I thought understood and respected me. I had spent years believing that intelligence and dedication were the foundations of a solid partnership. With David, I thought I had found someone who shared my passions and saw me for who I truly was. We had met in the lab working late nights on research that we both found exhilarating. He challenged me intellectually, and at first that felt like a good thing. But as time went on, I started noticing the small things. The way he always had to one-up me in academic discussions. How he subtly took credit for my ideas in front of colleagues. I ignored it, convincing myself that this was just how competitive researchers were. I never imagined he would betray me in the worst possible way. One evening, I stayed late at the lab, double-checking data for a paper we were co-authoring. I had been so excited. I had just received the acceptance letter for a prestigious research grant, something I had worked tirelessly to achieve. I printed out the email, intending to surprise David with the good news. That's when I walked into his office and saw them. Ava, my sister, wrapped in his arms, their bodies pressed together on his desk. At first, I couldn't process what I was seeing. It felt like an out-of-body experience, as if I were watching someone else's life fall apart. Then Ava looked up, her expression shifting from shock to something else, something closer to mild annoyance. "Oh, Emily." She sighed as she adjusted her dress, as if I had just inconvenienced her. David had the nerve to start some rambling excuse, something about how he had felt neglected because I spent so much time in the lab. My head spun. The papers in my hands crumpled as I clenched my fists, but the worst part wasn't their betrayal. It was what came after. I told my parents, expecting at least a sliver of support. But instead my mother gasped, clutching her chest, not in horror for me, but for Ava. "Please don't tell Richard," she begged. "He has a prenup. She'll lose everything if this gets out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My father nodded, his voice calm, as if he were talking about the weather. "These things happen, Emily. You need to be the bigger person." I had been the bigger person my whole life. When they missed my birthdays to attend Ava's performances, I stayed silent. When they sold our vacation cabin to fund her tuition, I swallowed my hurt. When they ignored my achievements in favor of her minor acting gigs, I let it go. But this was too much. For the first time in my life, I refused to be the bigger person. I cut ties. I walked away. And that was when my life truly began. In the chaos of it all, something unexpected happened. I met Michael. Michael was an architect designing a new research facility for my university. Our paths crossed at a fundraising event, and at first I didn't think much of it. He asked thoughtful questions about my work, but I was too exhausted from the David-Ava disaster to notice much else. It wasn't until our second meeting, when we sat down to discuss lab layouts, that I realized something. He listened. Not just politely, not just to respond. He genuinely listened. Unlike David, who turned every conversation into a debate, Michael asked questions out of curiosity, not competition. Over time, we grew closer. Late-night discussions about science and architecture turned into long walks and quiet dinners. When he proposed, it wasn't some grand spectacle for attention. He had hidden the ring in a blueprint tube, presenting it to me while we reviewed final designs for the research facility. It was us. Thoughtful, simple, perfect, and this time, I wouldn't let my family ruin it. We planned a small wedding, just those who had truly supported me. Ava was not invited. My parents were warned. If they tried to bring her, they wouldn't be allowed in either, but they didn't listen. On my wedding day, Ava arrived, in white, uninvited. My parents were with her, my mother sobbing dramatically, my father trying to reason with the security guards. "This is a family event," my mother wailed. "How could you do this to your only sister?" I watched from the bridal suite window, my stomach twisting. But before I could react, another car pulled up. Richard, Ava's husband. He had followed her. Suspicion had been growing for months, and now, in front of everyone, he confronted her. "You've been sneaking around with David, haven't you?" he demanded. Ava stammered, trying to deny it. But then, her phone rang. It was David. On speaker. "Are you still coming over later?" The entire crowd fell silent. My mother gasped, finally grasping the reality of the situation. But instead of blaming Ava, she turned to me. "Look what you've done!" she shrieked. "If you had just invited her properly—" I felt something inside me snap. "No, Mom. She did this, not me." I turned to the guests, my real family, my co-workers, my Aunt Linda, Michael's family, and of course Grandma Martha, standing tall at the entrance like a fierce guardian, and I said, "Now, shall we have a wedding?" And we did. Ava's marriage collapsed. Richard filed for divorce the next day. Because of the prenup, Ava got nothing. My parents, they tried to guilt me into helping her. "She's struggling," my mother sniffled over the phone. "She needs family now, more than ever." I let her voicemail go unanswered. Instead, I focused on my new life, my research, my husband. As Grandma Martha wisely said, some structures are too broken to fix. The best thing you can do is walk away and build something new. So I did. Michael and I left for our honeymoon, a trip through New Zealand where we visited some of the most cutting-edge research facilities in the world. The perfect fusion of science and leisure. Much like us. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents, but I do know this. I am done fighting for their approval. I have built a life filled with people who love and respect me, not because I'm someone's daughter or someone's sister, but because I am me. And for the first time in my life, that is enough. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.